Listen, it only took a couple of years, but the deal finally got done. And it's about time. Something that should have been done a long-ass time ago. Zach Wilson has been traded by the New York Jets. He's now a member of the Denver Broncos. He goes off to Denver for a 6th-round pick in exchange for Wilson and a 7th-rounder. Each team splitting his salary for the upcoming season, which is at $5.5 million, split 2 ways, obviously. So, it's kind of ironic that he heads over to Denver after the Sean Payton, Nathaniel Hackett stuff, and they're able to pull off a deal. But nonetheless, finally, Zach Wilson is out of New York, and he gets a fresh start with the Denver Broncos. And we are off and running with the Zach Wilson era in Denver. So only took a couple of years. Way too long. But here we are. How we feel about it?
I mean, a 6th-rounder, huh? I mean, that's that's just putting dirt on top of what was already maybe a dead situation in New York, right? I mean, to think that the idea of things working out for Zach Wilson after everything unfolded the way that it did, him getting the opportunity to possibly salvage what he could based off of Aaron Rodgers, his absence, and it to just kind of spin out of control the way that it did once again while he was at the quarterback's position. I thought in a lot of ways maybe he was deserving of the scrutiny. I mean, he is a quarterback. Quarterbacks get the scrutiny and the head coaches. But in a lot of ways I felt like the organization failed him as a top drafted prospect to their team. And I'll fall along the lines of what Q had been saying all along. They needed to let him go the moment they brought Aaron Rodgers in. I hope I'm not misspeaking on that. But
he was your number one guy in the draft, I thought.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, he was my guy. I did. And I just, I'm saying after it didn't look or appear that it was working out, they probably should have let him go when they brought in Aaron Rodgers so that there would be an extra year under his rookie contract for him to possibly have a chance to maybe show people that he was as good as advertised coming out in the draft. So I don't know, man. To me, it doesn't bode well. And I said this about what's going on in Pittsburgh. It doesn't bode well when you're a value proposition, you're a value acquisition. It just, to me, it doesn't bode well. But we'll see how it turns out.
The 6th-round pick is roughly the standard right now for what we're seeing. A lot of the 2021 quarterbacks get traded for, right? I mean, 5 of the guys who got taken in the first round, 4 are now on different teams. And I think 3 of them got traded for a 6th-round pick. So that's about what they're going for in most cases. I actually like the chance of this working out for Zach Wilson. I don't think he's going to be the guy this year. I would at least be surprised if he was. But think about Sean Payton's track record. Like, he gets to New Orleans, they sign a Drew Brees who injured his shoulder, who came off of what, he wasn't the guy with the Chargers. They drafted Phillip Rivers, and the rest is kind of history. He tried to, with Taysom Hill to some degree, make him kind of into a quarterback / kind of whatever he was. I don't know if you'd say that worked or it didn't work, but he kind of took a guy who, I don't know without Sean Payton's ingenuity or creativity, if he would actually been a player on that team. Russell Wilson didn't really work, gave it a year, but he did play a lot better football than he did under Nathaniel Hackett. If you compare the 2 years in Denver, the second year was much better. So for Zach Wilson, I think this is that opportunity with Sean Payton to be in a spot where he may be able to kind of coach him up and turn him around and get some of his best football out of him. And the surprising thing is, people can say whatever they want about Zach Wilson. He played some decent football last year. He actually played, for him, his best football, and it didn't get noticed because it didn't come with the wins. And it's funny, I was talking to my brother-in-law about just the NHL playoffs and everything going on right now, and one of the conversations, we were having was, it's tough when you get in the playoffs if you have you're like your goalie struggles, or if something happens, it's hard to overcome that. Like the goalie, there's probably a few other spots too you look at and you say, like, once you get into the playoffs, that position's going to drive things. The interesting thing I've always felt is like quarterback gets so much onus for like wins, yet really you've got a defense, you've got a special teams, a lot of other things that play a factor into whether you win or lose. And in this case, like, because the wins didn't come along with Zach Wilson last year, people didn't really see that he was playing better football for him. It was just a reality of where that team was at. And maybe he was never going to be the player that a lot of people thought he was going to be based on whatever they saw at BYU. So this, to me, is that kind of opportunity for him to settle in with a coach that I think can coach up quarterbacks, get the most out of them, and hopefully get the most out of him. And we'll see what's going to happen in Denver. But I can't imagine he's going to be the starter. I think they're going to get a first-round quarterback, and if not first round, take one in the second they would probably be seeing start.
Yeah, it's almost like people made up their minds on him going into last year. He's a bust. He's this and that. So even if he played, the decent football that you mentioned, he still wasn't going to win in the public opinion. And people in New York had already kind of written him off and said he is what he is, and they needed to make this move and move on. He was getting booed the year before. I do wonder about this because you mentioned the quarterbacks from the 2021 draft class that got traded. Is it just random sort of bad situations, or was this also part of the COVID year evaluation? Maybe the quarterbacks weren't what a lot of people thought they were, but they were drafted way too high, because Trevor Lawrence is the only one from the first-round guys that is still with his team. And they're working on, potentially getting a long-term deal done, but 4 of the 5 gone. And look, it's not like that was 10 years ago. I mean, it's 2021. It was a couple of years ago, and now they're all in other places trying to fight for backup jobs or whatever. I just wonder what was wrong with that draft class that got us to this point.
I mean, whoever followed Tom Brady was always going to have a hard time following those footsteps. Like, that's the reality of the Mac Jones situation. And I kind of felt like his ceiling was always going to be. It was going to be tough for him to go in the NFL and achieve a lot greater success. Like, you looked at Justin Fields, you looked at guys like Trey Lance, even Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence. I think everyone felt like they had a higher upside to them. But, every situation and circumstance is different. I think Trey Lance is the one that's most surprising. Like, that was a situation in San Francisco that didn't make quite as much sense for a number of reasons. One, they had Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, like very different style of quarterback too. He had played such little football. If you really looked at his college and even high school career, he had played such little football due to COVID. And so, maybe they looked at him as more of a project. They really thought he was going to burst those things and develop, but that's one that decision would break up most organizations between the general manager, head coach, whoever made the decision, whoever was a part of that. And they were able to overcome that and still be successful. Like, if you really think about it, like, that would tear apart where you'd have a new coach.
And they got better.
Yeah. And they've actually gotten better. Zach Wilson being with the New York Jets, that's a scenario where you kind of figure, well, someone's going to get fired, right? And it hasn't been the case. And in part because they went and got Rodgers, they're all in. This is that year where it falls apart if it doesn't. But you start combing through each situation and circumstance, it's always going to be a little bit different. I mean, for Ryan Poles in Chicago, he didn't draft Justin Fields. So usually when there's a change in that guy who's going to be your advocate, once he's not there, there's a good chance that they're going to move on from you at some point. So it's hard to put it with each team in every situation. The bottom line is none of them played well enough during their time there to justify keeping them on. And in some cases, barely played at all. In the case of a guy like Trey Lance.
I don't know. Listen, that draft class is that draft class. None of them have proven to be elite of elite, top tier, elite. Not even Trevor Lawrence.
Jeez.
I think the potential is there.
Damn.
I think he's knocked at the door, but he hasn't necessarily gone inside of it. It just, I mean, that's just I think the reality is that people have to accept that these are generally the outcomes for top-rated picks. Sometimes it's not. It works out. But more often than not, if you go into a highly publicized, highly scrutinized position in the draft, you're going to a team that generally is not in a great position. And for one reason or another, then you see coaching changes or you see changes in roster that are more drastic than maybe you'd see in other places. It's just the circumstances that high draft picks deal with are so much different than other people. Now, Trey Lance, you know, I don't know. I don't know why it went the way that it went. Maybe it was the injury. Maybe it was the pressure from Purdy coming in and playing the way that he did. I really don't know why it didn't go that way or go the way that it could have gone for him in San Fran, but I won't put it all on them. That's a good team. And they were heading in the right direction when they got him. So I don't really know, other than to say that they found a diamond in the rough with Purdy. But the rest of them is just kind of like, you know, Love was in that draft class too, right? I believe. Wasn't he in that draft class?
Yeah.
Maybe. Wasn't Jordan Love in that class?
No, the year before, I think.
The year before?
Yeah.
2020.
All right.
2020.
Yeah. So out of what is it? Lawrence, Lance, and
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields. I mean, if you think about it, all of them were in SE situations. All of them. Jacksonville wasn't a good team.
Well, Purdy was the following year.
Okay, so not Purdy. Right. I'm thinking Lance. I'm confused.
Mac Jones as well too. Justin
Mac
Fields.
Jones. I mean, Mac Jones seemingly was in a great situation. Seemingly.
He actually, if you look at him statistically, isn't that bad. Like, I think I mean, if you look at him statistically speaking, it wasn't quite as bad as I think it's been made out to be.
Yeah, I just don't feel like any of them were really in a great position, other than maybe Mac Jones, to really have great success. Like, I just think a lot of people have a lot of things to say about the New York Jets, things that are very similar to my experiences from listening to what they were in Washington. It doesn't sound like that's a situation that is based upon what the quarterback is going to change, and that's why I'm so down on them, even with the return of super bionic Achilles heel, Aaron Rodgers. Like, I just don't see Aaron Rodgers being the catalyst of turning that franchise around. Not when the decay comes from the root, not from the tooth. And so I just don't. I mean, to put a rookie in a situation where you're trying to have him change the course of that franchise, I don't know that any quarterback would do it. No quarterback has really done it yet. So I don't have any reason, until I see it, I don't have any reason to buy into the fact that somebody that you brought in there is going to be the catalyst of changing what that team has become.